Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this session. So we are going to start the first presentation entitled The Promotion of the Intercultural Speaker Through Humor in the Classroom by Dr. Asma, Moalla, Dr. Arafat, Awadh, Al-Jamil, and Dr. Nadia, Abid. Dr. Arafat, you can start.
Thank you very much, Dr. Asma, for the introduction, and thank you everyone for attending our today's session. Today's topic will be about the promotion of intercultural speaker through humor in the classroom. Will be presented by me and Dr. Asma, and co-authored also by Dr. Nadia Abid. So today we'll be walking you through the presentation. We'll be starting off with the introduction, then the literature review. After that, the theory and methodology that we used for the study, and the findings, and finally the conclusion. First off, with the rationale of the study. As we know that humor is one of the most sophisticated speech activities that people experience. It is a complex cognitive process underlying the ability to recognize meta-message of humor and co-create humorous verbalizations that are intended to evince laughter or to enhance and sustain relationships, and to establish that, which leads actually to the establishment and reinforcement of group cohesion and connectedness. And this cognitive process becomes even more complex when engaging in a humorous exchange with individuals from different cultures. Being able to initiate, identify, and support a humorous exchange, therefore, can be an indication that the speakers are developing intercultural competencies and skills. So that's actually the rationale for our study. And there are actually two main problems for this research project. What are the cognitive processes common to humor in the classroom and intercultural communication? And how can the use of humor in the classroom promote intercultural communicative competence? So let's talk now about the definition of humor. As we told you before, humor is a complex, universal phenomenon embodied in, just hold on, everyday conversational exchanges. And it can be used for several reasons: to mitigate conflicts in conversation, to reduce and establish and maintain social bonds and solidarity, express affiliation and disaffiliation from others, reflect cognitive emotions in a jocular and amusing manner, regulate individuals' emotions and others. And humor is characterized as non-bona fide mode of communication, which the aims is to ensure to turn a serious exchange into a serious or playful instruction. The speaker becomes uncommitted to the authenticity of the humor and ensures that the receiver is aware of the non-commitment, which is manifested in the expression of laughter. The complexity, let's now talk about the intercultural humor. Complexity and ambiguity of constructing humorous utterances do not necessarily give rise to intercultural communication conflicts, as we think most of the time. We think that when there is differences between individuals coming from different backgrounds, that ultimately is going to lead to problems, miscommunication. But instead, that will lead to joint creation of humor that will help establish solidarity and affiliation. So that is going to be creating a good environment where two interactants from different cultures are going to understand each other and to build support. And this is not strange, because a lot of studies being conducted so far, like Moalla 2015, Cheng 23, and Bill 27, Davis 23, and Davis 2015, which demonstrated this clearly. So let's give you some examples of some studies that were done between native speakers and non-native speakers in classroom interactions. For example, Cheng 23 found interactions from Hong Kong, Chinese, English-speaking cultures do not jointly produce and develop and negotiate spontaneous conversational humorous utterances and respond appropriately to them, but also find enjoyment in humorous exchanges. There is a sense of enjoyment here. And humor is found to be collaborative, interactive work constructed contextually. And they demonstrated understanding, the interactants demonstrated understanding, negotiated meanings and common grounds, express social norms, create rapport, and show coherence in discourse and express individuality. And another study by Bill 27 she revealed that humor didn't lead to any harm or conflict due to the adjustment they made in their verbal utterances and the contextual interpretation of meaning. The interactants were also found to abstain from discussing taboo topics or any likely harmful humorous expressions that can be misunderstood. So it shows some tactfulness here. And moreover, they found that interactants were prudent in their vocabulary choices when constructing humor, and they were able to accommodate with interactional communication to the communicative styles of others with a lenient behavior. The result of the studies were in defiance to the author's expectation that there is going to be any conflict happening from humor exchanges between people from different cultures. Let's move on now to the intercultural speakers, or the intercultural speaker. The concept emerged or developed in the field of foreign language education, coined by Byram and Zarate. There's a distinction between native speaker and intercultural speaker. The native speaker possesses the communicative competence, and the intercultural speaker has intercultural communication competence to deal with the challenges of intercultural encounters. And Byram defines the intercultural speaker as a learner who's able to interact with others via both spoken or written media, to accept others' perspectives and perceptions of the world, to mediate between the different perspectives. And someone who has intercultural communication competence or communicative competence has three key components or attributes, like knowledge, attitudes, and intercultural skills. And there is another thing which is called education. So knowledge is referred to as knowing oneself and others, individuals, and societal interactions. Attitudes refers to relativizing oneself and self-valuing others. Skills have two components, interpreting and relating, and also discovering and interacting with others from different cultures. Education is actually the political education and the critical cultural awareness. Now, let's move to the methodology. And in order to conduct the study, we targeted 29 post-foundation students, taking English courses, 25 female students, and 4 male students from one government university in Oman for a period of 6 months. And the speakers, they were like students, Omani English speakers who speak English as a second language, and native English speakers from the US and South Africa. We used purposive sampling to collect the data. We recorded the conversations happening between the students and the teachers. In a naturally occurring conversation, 35 humorous instances were merged, and follow-up interviews were conducted or administrated with the two teachers, and we identified the humorous exchanges and the functions they served. And we used to analyze the data Byram's intercultural communicative competence, Circo intercultural contexts, Hayes humor support, and cutoffs, joint fantasies, infectious conversation. So this is just quick. And this is what we did. Actually, we did the recordings first, then we did the semi-structured interviews with the teachers, the native speakers. So let's head now to Dr. Asma to continue on with the findings and the discussion.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Arafat. Now for the findings, we have 2 major findings revealed. Can you move on, Arafat? So we would like to know how the cognitive processes that are involved in humor are similar to the cognitive processes involved in intercultural communication. In other words, we said that in humor, there are complex cognitive processes involved in the creation and perception, negotiation of humor. It's the same thing in intercultural communication, where we tend to try to understand, avoid misunderstanding, avoid communication breakdown. And these cognitive processes are the same as in humor. The second finding focuses on the way the use of humor promotes intercultural communicative competence. In other words, how the skills of, or the humor competence, the skills used in class, the types of humor, the functions of humor, how we tend to avoid sensitive topics of humor and adjust our humor can lead to the promotion of the good intercultural speaker of intercultural communicative competence. Move on. So for the cognitive processes, we're going to deal with 3 major elements: the ability to stage discourse, the ability to shift frame of reference, and the ability to tolerate ambiguity. For the ability to stage discourse, which is based on the assumption that intercultural relationships should be built on joint efforts. In other words, there are reciprocal efforts. We don't really have this assumption that there is a party that has to abide by the norms or the social norms of another dominant culture in order to make communication effective. So staging the discourse is one step to reflect on the participants' perception and cultural norms and to be ready to accommodate the speech. In other words, we need to think ahead, or when we tend to think ahead before uttering something, before selecting our responses, then we are maintaining or working on maintaining effective communication. So participants in this study reported to think ahead before exchanging humor with someone from another culture. They were found to take into consideration the hearer's point of view and possible reactions to their speech. If I quote one of the teachers from South Africa, he said, "I think, yes, you have to kind of feel where the students are at and what you are speaking about, the context that you are in, and try to accommodate and take it from there." Now, for the cognitive processes involved, we have the ability to shift frame of reference. So in addition to staging the discourse, we have the ability to shift frame of reference, including the capacity to shift from one's own cultural frame of reference to that of the other, capacity to note difference and integrate incongruity, and capacity to tolerate ambiguity and appreciate difference. Let's deal with the first element, capacity to shift from one's own cultural frame of reference to that of the other. Move on. So here, this focuses on the flexibility and freedom to choose among alternative interpretations. When you interact with someone from a different culture, or when you exchange humor, you have in front of you an infinite number of linguistic resources or possible interpretations, and you tend to be flexible and choose the interpretation that is more positive and that could lead to effective communication. If I quote one of the teachers, she is from the US, and she was thinking of how Omani students tend to call close friends names like stupid or like, hey, stupid, hi, Denki, when they are so close, not when there is some distance. And she found this a bit surprising. She said, "I don't think I would ever call anyone stupid as a joke or even just like commenting. Sometimes I think it can be kind of seen as a joke here, which again is very much like a no to me. When you ask me if they are present in the room or not, I feel like that would be a cultural difference, because maybe in the US, we wouldn't say it directly to someone's face, but maybe if they're outside the room, we can say, wow, she gained a lot of weight. It's obviously it's not humor. It's going to be like really ego." So although she thinks that, or she does not appreciate this kind of humor, she realized that it's something cultural and that maybe there is a logical argument behind a close friend calling each other like stupid, hey, stupid, or hey, donkey. Move on. We also have the element of incongruity before this. Backward. Arafat. Yeah, incongruity. So incongruity in humor is seen as a non-fit between what the listener expects to hear or see and what he actually hears or sees. And in intercultural communication, incongruity is a non-fit between expectations based on the cultural frame of reference. In this case, it can be interpreted as inappropriate if the utterance is actually misunderstood. Just as in humor, we try to resolve the incongruity to understand the funniness of the utterance. Also, in an intercultural communication, we need to understand the cultural frame of reference to understand the communicative message. So in humor, for example, violation of the cooperative principle is relevant to the very specific context of the humor uttered. And in intercultural communication, even an inappropriate interaction can be interpreted as appropriate if we just say it must be something cultural. Tolerance for ambiguity is defined by Breslin as the ability to think about problems and issues even though all the facts and probable effects of decisions are not known. In short, we tend to tolerate situations in which uncertainty and incongruity are present. In the case of the study, participants reported that they could pretend to understand the joke and laugh just to support the joke. Now we focus on the second research question: how does the use of humor foster intercultural communication? So we have three main strategies used by participants in order to foster intercultural communication: avoidance of sensitive topics, contextualization or use of contextualization cues, and shift of attitude. Avoidance of sensitive topics. Here, I'm going to use one of the quotes reported by an American participant. She said, "I was teaching the topic on human migration, why people choose to migrate to different places. And so there was this activity where they had to think of factors that would push them out of their current country and pull them into a different country, like the negative factors that would cause them to leave their country. And while I was writing on the board, I was like, I could not talk about this in this country. So I said laughingly, I think you cannot talk about the negative things." And then we have laughter particles. But there were a handful of groups that said, "Miss, we cannot do this, like the police will come for us." I realized that I have to avoid talking about this, but I discussed it with my students and I told them that in the US, there are plenty of things we can talk about. So here, first, we have one of the indications of staging the discourse when she said, "I could not talk about this." So she was writing on the board, at the same time reflecting on what she said. And she thought that she doesn't have to talk about this because this is going to be perceived negatively in this culture. But she tried to decommit herself and retract from the force of the utterance, but making it or softening it a bit, and adding laughter particles to make it sound like it's a joke. But it was perceived seriously by students because it was like something very serious in this country. You don't have to talk about negative things when you are addressing or talking about your own government. Now, what happens here, or the intercultural skills gained, she realizes that she has to avoid talking about this topic. It's a sensitive topic in this culture, but at the same time, she managed to add some knowledge to her own students by sharing some of the social norms of her own culture, where they have plenty of things that they can do in their culture. We also have the use of contextualization cues, where you add some clues to your own utterance to identify it as playful. We have this example from the American teacher. I co-taught with a teacher from Iran, and in the World Cup, Iran and America ended up playing a match against each other. And so my Iranian co-teacher told that class that, if Iran won, he would give them all 5 marks. And immediately I had class with the same set of students that same afternoon. And so they came to class and say, Miss, this guy told us he will give us 5 marks if Iran wins. What will you give if America wins? And as they were laughing, I knew they want to joke about it. So I was like, I'll give you 10 marks if America wins. And we all shared laughter. So here we have the phrase, as they were laughing, she knew that this is meant to be a joke, and she played along with the gang. We also have shift of attitude, when you have a stereotype or wrong judgment about something, and then you realize that this is not true in this culture, and you tend to shift your attitude. Move on. Now, humor in the classroom as a way to foster ICC. We have this example from a recording by the teacher in the classroom, the teacher and her student. So Jay is the teacher. She said, "What is the best and worst things about from where your home is located?" And then she asked, "Okay, where are you from?" They said, "From Massaira Island." "Where you are from Massaira too?" addressing the other student. And she was surprised. "This is why you are friends." They said, "This is my cousin." "Oh, you are cousins." "I did not know that. Are you lying to me?" And then we have laughter particles. And then the student said, "No, we are not lying." And then we have shared laughter. If we try to analyze this quote, still have just 1 minute. I'm reminding myself. So try to analyze this quote. We have a teacher as a humor initiator, and this is something common to teacher-student interaction, but also to intercultural communication. We have foreign language learners or second language learners feeling a bit marginalized or inferior and comfortable initiating humor with someone from a different culture. The joke starts with something serious, just asking students about where they are from, but then it evolves progressively into the non-serious mode when she said, "Are you lying to me?" But she is not actually accusing them. She's just like meant to be funny about this. So here we have the students as receivers trying to process the utterance, they fail to understand the pragmatic force of the utterance by producing a serious uptake. They just like, no, we are not lying. And the teacher has to provide some contextualization cues through the use of laughter particles, and then we have shared laughter as the problem is resolved. So can you keep moving on? Because we have just like, so here what we have, if we have to analyze humor in the classroom and intercultural communication. So the teacher is the one who keeps initiating humor in the classroom in this study. The profile of the, the functions of humor used, reducing stress, being self-confident, using affiliative humor, suspending stereotypes, all of these are part of what could make of an intercultural speaker an effective communicator. So, okay, yeah, move on. That's the conclusions. So this study draws on the connection between humor and intercultural communication. It focuses on the role of classroom humor in promoting effective intercultural communication. Humor is found to be a powerful intercultural tool and an essential element in the development of ICC, intercultural communicative competence, and it is also found to be a fundamental part of an emerging intercultural identity, as it helps to determine who one is and what one values. Exchanging humor in the classroom is an opportunity to explore values, traits, and attitudes. Thank you very much.
What happens if there are sort of major differences between, you know, cultural differences between the kind of humor that's admissible in one, you know, in, let's say, the teacher's culture as opposed to the student's culture?
The student's culture as opposed to
the teacher culture.
Mm-hmm.
So suppose you have an American teacher, you know, in a you know, I don't know, Eastern school, right? I don't know, let's say Thailand, right? There's going to be huge cultural differences as to what's even admissible to joke about, you know, or let's say, you know, if I go and make a joke about God, right? That would probably not fly in many countries, right? So what happens in those kind of situations?
So as I said, in the context of the local Omani students who were taught by American teachers, the American teachers tend to avoid those sensitive topics. They are aware there are some sensitive topics and they tend to avoid them, and they try to use some clarification requests if they don't understand something, or they try to negotiate and discuss it with their students. But this is like when actually they become close to their students, not at the beginning of the classes. Just as they become close to them, they can negotiate, they can start asking, why do you do this? Like, for example, we have this, the American teacher asking women, are they actually free? Are they obsessed by their husbands? News media, for example, tend to broadcast women as being obsessed. So is this true? And they try to clarify. This happened later in the recordings that we have. So yes.
Can I add something?
Mm-hmm. Yes, Arafat.
So there is an interesting example, like probably we didn't have the time to discuss. It's about money. Like money is usually a topic that should be avoided, you know, in humor. But in one example, we noticed that the teacher, you know, not the same example that we offered, another one, they were talking about, okay, I'll give you 5 riyals, $5. Okay, I'll give you $10. Like there was like a kind of like, you know, bargaining, okay, between the teacher and the students. So though the teacher is American, but she was accommodating to the communication that is happening between her and the students. So maybe this situation would be handled differently if it was in the United States. So because such a topic may be considered as intrusion. But in Oman, like, you know, it seems like, you know, a topic that can be easily discussed among people that they know each other really well.
So you know, is there like literally a list of topics to be avoided?
yes, there are some culturally sensitive topics, like, if you talk about, for example, you make jokes about God, for example, this is totally, unacceptable in the Omani culture. If you, for example, criticize the government in a very kind of like, joking way, like, probably the students would not get engaged in that conversation. They'll try to avoid talking about it, or try to give an explanation straight away, just like what the students said. I don't think that the police officers will come over, but this is like, it's kind of an expression. Remember, these are just, students who are learning English as a second language. So they just wanted to show to the teacher that, well, this is something that is serious to the degree that maybe a police officer will come. So that's like, the message behind what they were saying. So there are topics that probably should not be discussed in a joking manner, especially when it comes to culture, religion, family, for example. Like if you make fun of mom, like the mom of one of the students, thinking that this is nice to, joke around. So the student will get offended. Of course, she would not engage in that conversation, and the teacher will run into problems. So such a topic should be avoided and handled in a very certain way. And because the teacher has an exposure with the students for a long time, she had enough knowledge about the cultural norms that are accepted in Omani the Omani context versus elsewhere. So that kind of understanding brought to a common ground where they can build a strong, friendly relationship where they can exchange joking or humor in a very, let's say, light or, collegial way. So that is what is happening during these encounters.
Thank you so much. Other questions? Thank you, Manel and Amy, for the compliments.